Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Williams, the founder of Remote Tribe. Welcome to another show of Remote Tribe. I'm here with another special guest, and this is Lisa Jansen. Did I pronounce that correct, Lisa? Is
Yes.
it
Yeah.
Jansen? Jansen, yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
so I grew up in Germany, and in Germany we say Jansen, but I moved to New Zealand 17 years ago, and in the English-speaking world it's Jensen. So I go by Lisa Jensen these days. Sounds more familiar than the German pronunciation.
Yeah, definitely. And considering you're living in New Zealand, that makes sense. So Lisa has a really, really interesting story for us. She's been an RV nomad, which is quite rare these days. Everyone wants to be like a digital nomad around Southeast Asia. But Lisa is doing something more special, and it involves a car, and also she's got a lot of life experience in that. Also, she's the author of 3 books, and that's very exciting. She's going to tell us more about that. So, Lisa, let me ask you a bit about yourself. Tell us, how did you start, and give us a bit about your background.
Yeah, happy to. So I already mentioned I grew up in Germany. I moved to New Zealand 17 years ago. Originally came while I was at university, and it was supposed to be just a semester or 2 semesters study abroad. And then I fell in love with New Zealand and never really left again. So now New Zealand's home and has been for a long time. And so for a good sort of 11 years here in New Zealand, I did a very sort of typical traditional life. I finished university, I got a job, I worked my way up, and did really well. But then about 6 years ago, started to ask myself those, fun big questions like, what am I doing with my life? And, is this really how I want to spend my days? And those, questions that I think are familiar to a lot of nomads. And basically what I decided to do at the time, it was kind of a bit of a spur of the moment, random idea I had is, I'm going to buy a camper van and I'm going to just, travel in my camper van and work remotely, and just kind of figure out, what life has to offer when you don't spend, your
That
all your days
was
in an office.
that was pretty early, I guess. I think it was early 2000 or a bit later than that.
So there was I started living and traveling in the van 6 years ago now. So that was the end of 2017.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty early, I would say, in the nomad movement, like especially in the RV life, because I mean, a lot of people starting working remotely since just a few years ago, but like living in an RV, that's relatively new, I would say. Yeah, as a nomad, because of access to internet and facilities and stuff like that. So I would say quite early for the van life, at least in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on, there's definitely some people who've been doing it a lot longer, but I do agree that it's gotten popular sort of the last, I think especially since COVID, it's maybe one of the few good things that have come out of COVID, right? Is that so many of us now have so much more flexibility in how we work and where we work. So that's given
Definitely.
more people, that freedom. And yeah, I've been really lucky that I've been able to do it since before, a pandemic forced us all to work remote.
Yeah, so you started about 5 6 years ago, and you stayed like that for a while. So what were I would say, what was the expectations and then the reality of living a van life? And tell us, how did you manage to work as well?
Yeah, so expectations, I didn't really have a lot. It was a bit of a, random idea I had, and I was just going to give this a go. And I was really, I'm not usually a very spontaneous person, but in that, example, I was just going to do this. I'm going to see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to, go back to Auckland where I was living at the time and, continue working in the city. So didn't have a lot of expectations. The reality was just amazing. Like, I think even if I would have had expectation, I would have exceeded them. So for me, just stepping away from that, career focused life in the city that's, very busy, very sort of focused on, money and titles and those sort of traditional achievements, and stepping away from that into a life that's a lot more about freedom and free time and exploring new places and adventures, was really incredible for me. And it's sort of in the book I wrote about the journey, I describe it as a feeling like a fog had been lifted from my brain that I didn't even know was there. All of a sudden I had this sense of clarity about, who I am and how I wanted to live my life and my priorities and what's important to me. And so that was really amazing. And
I
also
think a
like
lot of,
on a
yeah, sorry, just to add something, I think a lot of
oh,
people felt that during COVID. I think it
mm,
was a time of awakening for real. I'm very happy to see that. I'm very happy to hear that a lot of people have started doing other hobbies and they started changing their life because they realized, there's not so much left over there. And I think you're not the only one. So congratulations for that. And
yeah,
I'm happy that you found something that you like and also that you're enjoying life to the fullest because that's what's
yeah,
all about, I believe.
it is.
And yeah, and yeah, I mean, it seems like there are alternatives to this modern corporate rat race. Definitely
Yeah,
there's so many
absolutely.
ways to live, and it's funny because we live in this bubble, the Western bubble, I call it, where that's what you get sold and you're not
Mm,
taught to do something else, and it seems like that's everything. And if you're not in a big city, life is over. But actually it's the opposite now because you can work remotely and you can make a living online,
yeah.
and you can live somewhere else because you don't need that much money if you don't live in Auckland or London or New
Yeah.
York.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's something, and I've heard a lot of other nomads talk about this too. It's like being a nomad, it automatically means having less stuff, right? Because regardless of how you travel, whether it's in a van or, traditionally more with, trains and airplanes, you sort of have
Yeah,
to, reduce your stuff. And for me, that was such a freeing experience. It just really made me realize, like, actually, I don't need a lot of stuff to live a really awesome life and be happy. And I think when you realize that, it like for me anyway, it sort of automatically meant that, hey, if I don't need a lot of stuff and if I don't need the luxury car and the, those sort of things, then that means I don't have to work, 40, 50 hours a week in
to
an office
maintain.
for the rest of
Exactly.
my life, right? And that's really, yeah, that to me has sort of been the biggest realization and like light bulb moment out of all of this.
Yeah, I think also there's another movement by Gen Z at the moment, from what I see, is that they don't really want to own much because that limits themselves, that limits them a lot, and that makes
Mm,
sense because obviously having a mortgage in an expensive city, having a car in an expensive city, makes you have to work a lot, and
yeah,
also they feel like they're being stuck, so they don't want that. So I think there's going to be a problem with the way we consume things.
yeah,
I think it's gonna change a lot. So also, like if you look at population growth in a lot of countries,
mm,
that has changed a lot, especially in Europe. So it's gonna be very interesting in the future to see how sustainable everything is. But it is what
yeah,
that's the trend,
definitely.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so Lisa, let me ask you, how did you start? What was the process of you starting the RV life in terms of like, did you buy your van? Did you rent it? How did you look into things?
Yeah, no, so I like just went, all the way, went for it. It's so funny because write books and I also write for a travel magazine here in New Zealand and sort of give other people advice around the lifestyle, right? And one of my advice is always, oh, rent before you buy and like talk to lots of people and, try like different models and look at lots of bands before you buy one. I didn't do any of that myself. I was just I was on a mission. I just had this idea and I wanted to make it happen. And so I looked, for vans online on Trade Me, which is sort of New Zealand's version of eBay. And yeah, found a van I really liked and had a mechanic check it for me because I don't know anything about vehicles. And then I bought it and yeah, it was very yeah, I
It was
just
already converted, I guess. It was ready to
yeah,
go.
yeah. Yeah, it was. I did love the idea of, buying an empty van and converting it myself, but just sort of had to be a bit realistic about it because I don't have the skills, the tools, the time, the place, to do a conversion. And ultimately for me, what it came down to was, I can spend the next 6 months trying to convert a van, or I can just buy one that's ready to go and, enjoy summer. So really that's what I did.
Yeah, I think it can be really frustrating to convert a van. Like if you're not a
Mm,
good carpenter or like don't have any
yeah.
technical skills, it's quite hard. I've seen a lot of videos, like there's a lot of hard work to convert for all the people out there who wanna start doing that. Just look into it because it might be a very long process if you start doing that and
Yeah.
you have no idea what you're doing.
Absolutely. Like I know heaps of people who've done it, and unless they're, very experienced carpenters, pretty much all of them say, it ended up taking twice as long, cost twice
Yeah.
as much. And like here in New Zealand, materials can be really expensive, and so it's actually often more affordable to buy one that's ready to go because they're shipped in from the UK or wherever. So it was financially for me the better decision too.
Yeah,
And
makes sense. And
yeah.
did you have a target of time in mind? Like I want to do this for a year or 6 months, and how much do you end up doing it in the end?
Yeah, so originally, when I first started, the sort of official story for others, but also for myself, was that I'm going to do this for a summer. Um, but I already had this idea in the back of my mind that it could be a lot longer than that. But so, I said originally I'm going to go for, a summer, which essentially would have meant like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months. Which is kind of summer and autumn, I guess. And then I just loved it, and so I kept going. I didn't want to return to my old life, and also when I first set off, like we said before, this was before COVID, so remote working as such didn't really exist yet. So I didn't know what my financial situation would look like. I didn't know if remote working would work out for me. So that was in the back of my mind as well. But loved van life, all the work stuff just fell into place perfectly for me, and so I just kept going. And yeah, by the end, I lived in my van almost 5 years before I decided time for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think change is good a lot of times, even when things are going well. Honestly, like you have to do these kind of things
Yeah,
to kind of have a fresh start and enjoy some other things and feel like you're doing
yeah,
something.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So Lisa, tell us about working in the van. So how do you
Mm.
how did you go about that? Because I mean, New Zealand is a vast place. I don't think you've got like phone coverage everywhere. How did you go around the internet? And yeah, how did you get work done?
Yeah. So I work in marketing. I was a marketing manager before I did all of this, and so it is the kind of work that sort of lends itself to being done digitally. So when I first started, I was very lucky. So at the time, I was working for a company, a startup. And I was their head of marketing technology business, and I told the CEO, who I had a really really good relationship with, and I told him what I wanted to do, thinking I was resigning, which I didn't really want to do because it was a great company to work for, but just knew that that was something I wanted to do. And I was really lucky that he and the rest of the team were super excited for me and really supportive, and basically asked me to stay on and work remotely while I travel, just sort of 10-15 hours a week. And so that was perfect, right? Because I started traveling, essentially taking my existing job on the road with me at a
That's great.
scaled back level, and that's really like super lucky. And I'm super, super grateful for that. Um, and so initially, when I started, I was literally just hotspotting off my phone, my laptop on my knees, and just sort of, working like really improvised. I would often, stop at libraries. Like I don't know what it's like elsewhere in the world, but in New Zealand, libraries are an amazing place for nomads. We've got little libraries, and any like smaller mid-sized town in New Zealand, most of them have a public library, and you can work there. It's got free internet, awesome places. So I did that a lot, and also out of cafes, as you do occasionally. So I did that for like the first 2.5 years, and that worked really well. I then, ended up finding new clients as a sort of virtual marketing manager, virtual marketing consultant, and it's sort of just through referrals and word of mouth, and that was really great. And then COVID happened, and what happened during COVID is that everyone discovered video calls, right? And so all of a sudden, I had to do all these video calls, and so hotspotting off my phone just wasn't really enough anymore. I kept having issues, and so then I signed up. Here in New Zealand we have it's called mobile broadband. So I actually have or had a modem that looks like a normal
Yeah,
Wi-Fi modem that connects to 12 volt, and uses, I think they use the cell phone networks and
towers.
towers.
Yeah, but they're a bit more powerful than
Yeah.
the phones, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah. So I had much better, much better internet coverage in more places. Because you're absolutely right what you mentioned before. Like, there's definitely huge parts of New Zealand where you don't have cell phone coverage. But even with these providers, I wouldn't have coverage, and so I just had to plan for that. I had
yeah.
to kind of, you get coverage maps, and so I'd have to check what coverage is like before I go somewhere, and plan around that. I was, for a lot of the time when I was traveling, I wasn't working full time. I would often, do like maybe 3 or 4 months, especially over winter, where I'd be more in one place, and then I would just hunker down and work a lot. And then I could, work less over summer, and travel a lot more. And so, I'd try to, maybe work Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and be in, places where I got good coverage, and then go off the grid the rest
So
of the
that's a good,
time. And
yeah, that's a good takeaway for people. Like you have to plan your journeys with the car
mm,
because obviously you want to be online, especially if you plan to work those days. So Lisa, like
yeah.
you're saying that you had these sprints for working, where or do you have like some fixed days? How do you organize your time when you're working?
Yeah, like I tried all sorts of different things, and to be honest, I never really worked out the perfect solutions. I had the first sort of 3 years. Yeah, I was kind of lucky, and it worked out really well that I had, was able to get a lot more work over winter, and then less over summer, and so I sort of had this rhythm. But it worked in many ways, was really good, but it also had its challenges because it meant that, winters often, like, I had sort of a life of two extremes. I had winters where it was just like, at the computer, and it was dark and rainy and cold outside, and it was almost a bit of a sort of depressing kind of, life sometimes. And then I had summers that were just like awesome and fun. And I struggled with that at times. Like, I just, the winters were getting to me, and I struggled through a couple of winters with that, because I'm also, someone who, despite like my lifestyle and the choices I've made, I do care about my career, and I am quite ambitious in that regards as well. So
Hmm.
when I, work, I put a lot of effort into my work and a lot of thought. And so I sort of almost, went too far in winter and just took on too much work, too much pressure. And so, had that. And so then I try to balance it out more across the year, and sort of have a, work 25 hours more consistently across the year per week, rather than doing these, 10 hours in summer and 40 to 50 hours in winter situation. And that it, I like that a bit better. However, it did sort of limit my travels a bit more, because I didn't have that luxury anymore where I could be off the grid for, 5 or 6 days and then work for a couple of days, but I had to
Yeah,
be, more available. So really pros and cons, I think. And it's one of those things that I feel like, every nomad sort of has to figure out for themselves, and maybe try
exactly.
different
There's no
options. And
recipe. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. And like for me, I think a lot, it also depends a lot on the kind of work you do, because for me, the work I do, so I actually have a lot to do with clients. And, especially as I'm sort of getting more experience and taking on more senior work, there is sort of an expectation as well from clients that I am, available to them. And that's kind of a bit of a balancing act as well, right? And there might be, for some people, they might prefer to do more, executional work and more junior work that maybe doesn't pay as much in terms of an hourly rate, but then you don't have that expectation from clients,
yeah.
and you sort of, one step
You just
removed.
deliver stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas if you're like me, and I now do, quite a lot of strategy work for clients, and sort of more of a, kind of like a virtual CMO, like chief marketing officer type role, it pays
By
really
the way, do
well, but
you
it
tell
also
your
comes.
clients? Do you tell your clients you're in an RV? And what do
Yeah,
they say about that?
I was nervous about it in the beginning, And I was always a bit careful about what I said, but everyone's always loved it. And I've always had like such good responses from it. And, every meeting I was in would start with, "Oh, Lisa, where are you today?" And, everyone was always really excited about it. So, yeah,
That's
yeah,
good to
but I
hear
was,
because there's still a lot of prejudice around this kind of
yeah,
lifestyle, and yeah, I don't know. It's well, I still don't understand why that is. As long as you do your job and you're a lovely person, and
yeah.
you've got a good relationship with your colleagues, like I don't understand, but that's
Yeah,
society, I
absolutely.
guess.
And I think it's also worth considering in that context that New Zealand is probably a little bit more liberal in those
Yeah,
things than some other countries. Like we are definitely a lifestyle country. People don't come here to get rich. People come here to live good lives. And so, I think I would recommend to nomads to, maybe, I would recommend to be a little bit careful and not saying to
yeah,
hide it or to lie, but especially if you're maybe starting out as a freelance and you're building up a network and a reputation and you're winning clients. For me now, it's been over 6 years and I get all my work through referrals and word of mouth. And so I don't have to prove anything anymore. But when I was starting out, I still had a lot to prove. I was still, working hard to be taken seriously. And so I think, yeah, I was a bit careful about what I said, and I would recommend other nomads do the same as well.
yeah. Same here, especially if you're freelancing in the beginning. Yeah, you never know. I mean, the people don't usually ask your clients, so just keep it casual, and then if they get curious, maybe you can divulge.
Yeah, yeah, and especially once you've done great work, right, and you had some great feedback from them,
Exactly,
then
exactly.
then they know you're doing a good job, and it's not impacting the quality of your work. So then it's a very different story, I think.
Fair enough. And
Mm.
Lisa, what were your biggest challenges, would you say? So what would you advise people to take care of when starting the RV life? And anything from where to park to where to work and safety and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I didn't really have any massive challenges. Like for me, it sort of all fell into place, and it was great. I think the advice I would have, like some of the things that were really valuable to me, is just so having the right resources and network and connections. And so, for example, in New Zealand, we have a great mobile app that's called Campermate that tells you
Mm,
all where all the campgrounds are and where to get fresh water and where to what to do with your rubbish and all that stuff. And so that was, super helpful.
super
So
helpful. Yeah.
yeah, so I'd advise people to have a look, what is available like that for them. And also, something that was huge for me is connecting into the community. And whether you do that, with Facebook groups or, any kind of like communities and meetups and those sort of things. But when I think when you make, especially when you're maybe someone who you sort of the odd one out in your group and your people, and everyone else is sort of living more of a traditional life, and you decide to do something quite different, which is what my situation was. Like all my friends were off getting married and buying houses and pursuing their careers, and I decided to do something quite different. And it was so incredibly valuable to connect into the nomad community, other people doing van life all over the world. It just you learn so much. It gives you that confidence and peace of mind that you can do it, others have done it, makes you feel less alone. So yeah, I think that would be a big one for me, is to connect into the community and find it. um
Yeah, I never looked into the van life in Europe, but I'm guessing there are a lot of groups. And also, I think the van life is quite big in Netherlands, in Belgium,
mm,
where people just rent this. It's a huge business actually, and then you see a lot of Dutch people going down south to Greece or to Turkey. So I think Europe is
yeah,
also a great place to do the van life. It's quite safe,
mm,
I would say, in most of it. You definitely have special camping sites. There are apps as well. So I think
yeah,
Europe is a great place if you're outside Europe and you want to come here and rent. There are a lot of options. I think it's more expensive than
mm,
the US or New Zealand maybe,
mm,
but still I would say affordable. And yeah,
yeah,
I'm guessing the community is big here as well from what I hear from my friends.
yeah,
So
yeah. definitely. It's huge Facebook groups. And I know there's, in a lot of parts, they're organizing meetups, and gatherings and that sort of stuff. So yes, definitely, a bit of a movement. And usually just like by nature, those sort of people are super welcoming and open. So yeah.
So did you have a special camping sites? Did you park over there? How was it?
Yeah,
Was there like a community around this camping sites?
yeah, definitely. So we in New Zealand we have a club, like it's the New Zealand Motorhome and Caravan Association, which is a club you can join, and then they have properties where you can park overnight or stay for a few days, and so you automatically kind of meet people through that. I have to say that like in New Zealand especially, if you look at like people traveling in RVs in New Zealand, it's the majority are tourists, who are visiting just for
Oh, interesting.
a few months. Retirees, super popular for your retirement in New Zealand. Lots of Kiwis, buy a motorhome or a caravan to travel in retirement. And then, of course, we've got lots of young people coming in, backpackers and people from all over the world. They come and, buy or rent vans here, and then they spend 6 months traveling around New Zealand. So really cool, like diverse community. But, me being in my mid-30s, not being the young early 20s person, but also not the retiree, it was a bit harder. Like I like managed to find some like-minded people and made some good friends, but yeah, it was a bit more of a challenge. And I think like from what I hear on on Facebook groups, that's maybe a little bit easier in other parts of the world. Maybe just because there's more people, and in New Zealand, small country, it's not
Yeah.
a whole lot of people down here. But yeah, I found that was a bit of a challenge for me, especially early on. You sort of feel a bit, like the odd one out um, at
How
times.
about the workplace? Did you have a small desk in your van, or did you have to pull to a library or a house every time?
No, so I had my van is like the setup is very very common. So I had obviously the seats, the driver's seat at the front, and then behind that the little kitchen on one side and the bathroom on the other side, and then two like long benches at the back with a table in the middle. And so at night that would turn into my bed, put the table down and becomes a bed. But during the day that would be my office, lounge, dining table, all of the above. And yeah, so I'd work there.
Nice. And I mean, how did you find these great spots to park your car and just enjoy the landscape outside? Because New Zealand has some amazing landscape. So did you do some research before riding the car and just parking it somewhere? Can you park it anywhere, by the way?
So it's good question. So there is a bit of a myth or belief that in New Zealand you can just hire a camper or buy a camper and park anywhere and park for free. And that's not true, and it's getting harder and harder just as it becomes more popular. As always, it becomes more restricted. But
Sure.
we still we have some amazing places, and we have you still can do some freedom camping. We also have some sort of low cost campgrounds where basic sort of facilities, and then of course the high end campgrounds as well. But in terms of how I would find spots is the app that I mentioned, Campermate, and there's another one called Rankers as well. They show you, and then like word of mouth, and you meet people and they tell you about
Yeah.
amazing places, and you go and check them out. And sometimes you just like go for a look and explore somewhere, and you're like, oh, this is a nice spot, and you sort of find something like that.
Some hidden
But
gems.
yeah,
Yeah, I have a
yeah,
feeling the RV community is a lot like the sailing community, where you meet people on boats in the port or just in the sea, and then they share with you some of the small islands and small ports
yes.
and places to eat. I think it's pretty similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, there's some people who write blogs about, different paths and places they've been. And so then that gives you inspiration. And yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah, it's
absolutely. That reminds me of the trip I made to Vietnam recently, and It's a very funny story. I met some Americans in a market in Bangkok, and actually they told me about this guy who had an amazing website about Vietnam and the motorbike routes
Mm.
you can take there. And I saved that website, and when I went there, it was like paradise for motorbike travelers. So I've done half of Vietnam because of this guy.
Wow.
And basically, he was describing all the roads, what kind of bike you need, pictures with the road quality, everything was there. So,
Wow.
because of this, I was able to cover so much in such a small time.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, this is just one example of how you can find amazing resources online. Just look it up because it can
definitely.
make your life much easier.
Absolutely. Yes. I think like for me, it was often a bit of a combination, do some research, but then also, kind of live in the moment. What I would say, like
Sometimes,
anyone,
yeah.
anyone who's maybe listening and thinking about coming to New Zealand, definitely recommend like doing some research and digging a little bit deeper. I often feel like it's almost a bit of a shame that so many people come to New Zealand and they tick off all the, famous places,
Sure.
but there's so much more and there's so many like hidden gems in New Zealand. So it's worthwhile, I think, doing a little bit of extra research and finding some of those rather than just sort of ticking off the Lonely Planet top 20 places to see in New Zealand kind of list.
Yeah, and I think if you plan, you see more in general. I mean, I meet a lot
Mm,
of people who don't plan that much. I do. Like I like planning at least 3 months in advance,
yeah,
because it offers me a bit more stability, and also, you save up money and you're not stressed because that's one stress I don't want to have. Like basically, I just want to
yeah,
minimize all the sources of stress, and it
yeah.
turns out
Oh,
really well. So I think maybe people who come
mm,
to New Zealand should definitely do that research months in advance and then plan, more or less have like a big plan in place.
yeah. I agree. However, I also think that, one of the great advantages of like living in an RV or in a van is that flexibility. If you travel in sort of more traditional ways, right, and you have to book hostels or hotels or,
Yeah, I was talking
whatever,
about that. Sorry. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know so then it makes sense. But the great thing with the van, and like something that I've really enjoyed about it is, I love my like activities. I kite surf and I paddleboard and I try to surf. I'm not doing a very good job at it, but just the ability to respond to the conditions and the weather. And if it's like looks really great in one spot for kite surfing, then I can just go there, even though if maybe my original plan was to go somewhere else. So I really loved having that flexibility, and that's kind of what a van gives you, because you can just
You're right.
drive off
You're
with
right.
your home. Mm,
You're right. It's definitely different than the digital nomads, globetrotters
mm,
that use planes and maybe trains.
mm,
Definitely, because you've got more flexibility. I mean, you can cover so much with a car, and you don't have to catch a train or a plane. Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. And
Yeah,
probably it's different for the sailing nomads, where it all depends on the weather, so you can't really do
exactly.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah,
plan accordingly. That's the
yeah,
conclusion I would say. It's
yeah.
it's
So
different. There is no recipe, as we said before.
yeah, yeah. Have a plan, but give yourself the flexibility to change your plan. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Lisa, what were your like biggest takeaway from this like freedom lifestyle, I would say? Did it meet the expectations? Like any kind of aha moments that you had during the this period?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is what I already mentioned, sort of just the realization that, I don't need a lot to be happy. And the implications of that. Um, Other than that, like it's really opened my eyes to all the different ways to live a great life. I think a lot of us, like we still live in a society where it sometimes feels like there's only this one path in life. If I think back to when I was 18, 17, 18, 19, finishing school, like I didn't even think about what options there were, or what the path might look like, because it just didn't seem worth thinking about. It was, of course, I'm going to go to university, and then I'm going to get a job, and then I'm going to get married, and I am going to have kids, and I'm going to buy a house, and then, one day I'm going to retire. And it's just that path. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that is what makes someone happy, then I think, go for it and make the most out of it.
It's just
But I think
unfortunately
it's
we don't get presented the alternatives. these
Exactly,
days. Yeah.
exactly. And so doing what I've done has really opened my eyes to how many other ways there are, how many people are doing it, living amazing lives. When I made these decisions for me, like I literally thought I was the only person who feels like this and the only person who wants to do something different. And then I did, and I became part of that community. And all of a sudden, there's like thousands of other people, living amazing lives and doing different things in different ways and being successful at it. More importantly, being happy and having, great, meaningful lives. And so that to me is, it's been such an eye-opening experience and something I'm so, so grateful for to now, have this different level of awareness and just question things a lot more. The don't take it for granted that there's only that one path that society presents us with. There's so many more.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I think you said it very well there. I mean, we don't get presented all the other options for
Mm,
one reason or another. Unfortunately, yeah, people moved to big cities some time ago, and a lot of them haven't even experienced the countryside lifestyle with like animals
mm,
and small farms, which is pretty cool. Yeah,
mm,
you don't have all the luxury. I mean, nowadays actually you can have a lot even in the farmhouses. Like there's so easy to transport things and order things online, so you could actually
mm,
live in a very comfortable like chalet or something like that, absolutely no problem. I think a lot of people are worried about the kids education, which is a fair
mm.
point. But at the same time, I think there are alternatives if you look around, like world schooling and Montessori, or I mean, they're
Yeah,
popping up here and there more and more.
yeah, absolutely.
uh,
And look, the thing that I often say to, and I've talked about this before with other people, and it's sort of still have a really hard time wrapping my head around this, right? But we're often led to believe that doing anything outside the norm and anything different is risky.
yes,
And you
exactly.
have to be careful, and ooh, what if it goes wrong? And you say, oh, but what about the education for the kids and this and that? And the more I think about it, the more I sort of feel like, it's just backwards. Because like, look at the world and society and where we're heading. Like, so many people just aren't happy in that traditional life. So many people are struggling with depression and anxiety and feeling
So maybe
overwhelmed.
maybe that's even more risky than being an RV nomad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just don't think it's that risky compared to the alternative. It's not like doing what everyone else is doing is a guaranteed path to happiness. It seems to
Absolutely not,
be.
especially nowadays. Yeah, I mean, if you look on
Mm,
on TikTok, because I'm there sometimes just to see what the new gen
mm,
is saying, and basically they understand that going to a uni, getting good grades, and building that career path doesn't work anymore because of inflation, because you
mm,
get fired very easily now and very fast. So they also have this existential question: is like, why am I doing all these things, and do I really want to build a career, so to say? Because there is no career anymore. It's like it stops at one point. It doesn't really pay
mm,
that well anymore anyway, because there's inflation, especially in countries outside the US where salaries haven't kept up. And then it's like, how about I live my life? That sounds
mm.
good. And I really don't need
Yeah.
that much money. So I'll find a way to live my life with less money, but I'm definitely going to be much happier and have more flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something that I challenge myself on, all the time and try to remind myself on, it's at the end of the day, it's, what's it all for if you're not happy? And it doesn't mean that every day needs to be super fun and joyful. And, of course, there's going to be hard times and challenges and struggles. But on the whole, what's it all for if I'm not happy? And so that, I try to remind myself of that and make that a priority and make choices based on what I think will make me happy rather than what, society wants us to think will make us happy.
Yeah, yeah, and we're being bombarded with a lot of these stories everywhere.
Mm,
It's quite hard to discern what's good for you and what's bad for you. A lot of
yeah,
time wasters as well, so there's less time to think. That's what I love about traveling. I have time for myself. I can think
yeah,
when I'm waiting for a plane. I can plan the next move.
yeah.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so Lisa, you have already three books. What would you say are, like what's the takeaway from these books? What made you write books, and who did you write them for?
Yeah, so I've always loved writing since I was, young, a teenager. It's always been a way for me to think and process thing and just love the process. But it was always just, yeah, I always dreamed about writing a book, but sort of in the way of, you dream of something is not going to happen. Like maybe I'll do when I'm retired, right? But then I changed my life and I started to live in my van and travel, and I had a lot more free time, and all of a sudden the inspiration and ideas just came, and before I knew it, I was writing my first book, and had the time and the headspace and the energy for it. So it's another really awesome thing that's come out of van life for me. And so I wrote the first book, which is called One Size Does Not Fit All, in 2018. It was published in 2019, so that was the first one, and it's really about looking at yourself and figuring out who you are, your personality, your strengths and weaknesses, your values, and then building a happy life around that, rather than believing the sort of one size fits all advice and science that's out there. um and then I started writing for a travel magazine in New Zealand, and that led to the second book, which is The Nomad's Ultimate Guide to New Zealand, and that's sort of a guide travel book for actually predominantly New Zealanders looking to buy motorhomes and travel here, but could be interesting as well for anyone coming to visit. Probably some useful stuff in there. And then just recently I published my third book, which is called Life Done Differently: One Woman's Journey on the Road Less Traveled. And that's a memoir, and that tells my story of the last 6 years, and the choices I've made and stepping away from that traditional path to see what else is out there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna leave some notes. I'm gonna leave
Yeah.
the books in the description. Definitely, if people want to have a look. I would encourage you to buy Lisa's books because they're very interesting for
Yeah.
sure. So what's next for Lisa then, Lisa?
Well, so good time to ask that question, because for the last 6 months, whenever anyone asked that question, I was like, I don't really know. But I have now made a decision, actually committed. So I sold my camper van about 18 months ago now. And since then, I've been traveling as a house sitter. So I've been house sitting, pet sitting all over New Zealand, traveling around, which was
Is
a
that the
really great way
thing
to travel.
in New Zealand?
Yeah,
Is that the thing?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's actually a thing globally. There's a big community globally. People who do it. People go on holidays and need someone to look after their pets and their houses. So it's kind of a win-win situation. So I've been doing that, for about a year and a half, which has been really like another really awesome way to travel. Quite different, but awesome. But I have now just last week bought a caravan, so a trailer this time. So I'm gonna be
So something
a
bigger.
nomad on wheels. And again, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot bigger. It's like compared to the van, it's a mansion. So yeah, it's awesome, and I'm actually planning on staying put on a campground in New Zealand for a few months and just have a bit of stability, stay in one place, build up a bit of a community again, kind of have a home base, so to say. And then I'm going to start traveling in
So I'm
the
guessing you
caravan.
wanna spend more time in one place this time, right?
Yeah, I think, and be interesting to hear your thoughts on this as well. But I've heard a lot of nomads talk about this, like when you do this for a long time. Like, it's been over 6 years for me now without a home and a base, and I do miss the sense of community and belonging, and the having familiar people around you, familiar places. I like, one of my favorite examples is sort of that coffee shop where I can go and they know my name and how I like my coffee, because I'm a regular, and I haven't had that in 6 years, and I'm just been starting to miss it. So the idea is to, have in Christchurch here in New Zealand on the South Island, sort of have that base that I, stay put now for maybe 6 months, and then travel, but keep returning back here, and sort of have that a little bit more of a sense of
Yeah, I
familiarity
think
and
it's
a sense of
I,
home.
I I think it's harder to build a network, or at least
Mm,
keep the network when you're traveling with the RV or the trailer, because you move quite often. Like For us, like regular nomads, you just go to maybe like a co-living space for 3 months, and then you've got your community there. You can travel by plane and go back to your home or home bases, and you immediately blend in. So I think it's more challenging from that perspective. But I think if you're going to park the trailer in a place where there's already a community, I think that's going to work out for you. So well done.
Hopefully.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
And
very excited. I can't wait.
yeah, send us pictures and
Yes.
videos. We're gonna post them. Very excited.
Yeah. Yeah. Will do.
Awesome, Lisa. Thanks a lot for being with us. Where can people find you? We're gonna leave some notes in the description, of course.
Yeah, of course. So I've got a website which is just lifedonedifferently.com, where you can, find everything else. I am on Facebook and Instagram as Life Done Differently NZ for New Zealand. And yeah, always love connecting with nomads from all over the world. So please do, reach out. And always love seeing what other people are up to and what cool things they're doing. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for being with us, and wishing you all the best in your
Awesome.
adventures.
Thank you, and thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.